Okay, we're connecting. Okay, well,
Woke everybody up. Well, good morning. I'd like to call the regular board meeting of Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 to order. I'm grateful that we're all here still in person, and just makes it a nice environment to be able to look at each other and speak and whatnot. And thank you, Jesse, for joining us. So I think Corey's got some different camera techniques here, so that will be something exciting to look forward to. So with that, Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Okay, Director Balin,
Here.
Director Boatright,
here.
Director Kearns,
Here.
Director Murphy is currently absent but will be joining us later. Director Ringen,
Here.
okay.
Thank you. And at this time, Director Ringen, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I'd be honored. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we'll move into the public forum at this time, and we'd like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to the district business. Any member of the public may address the board related to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it is noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. So at this time, Corey, is there any member of the public on Zoom that would wish to address the board?
Not that I'm seeing at the moment, no.
Thank you. Then I will, and I see that no one in the audience wishes to address the board.
President,
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'd like to speak.
Oh, as a member of the public?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm Ron Rand, a ratepayer, TUD ratepayer, and got a couple things here. If I can get them out of the darn bag. Okay. So, anybody tell me what I got here?
Avocado.
How about that?
Right on cue. Tomato.
Okay, so, you're factually right, but that's not the answer I wanted. You're looking at 19 gallons of water. It's what it takes for each avocado to be grown. And this guy, you're looking at 2 gallons of water. So why am I bringing this up? Well, we're in the 3rd year of drought. And way back when, after the gold rush started calming down, Tuolumne County went to agriculture, logging, farming, ranching, and from my understanding, what I've heard, that's where the mine and Bodie was fed from, Tuolumne County. So with food shortages and rising costs, well, first of all, these are grown mostly in Southern California. And as you know, there's not gonna be any water down there pretty quick. So enjoy your guacamole while you can. And for the rising fuel costs for shipping and trucking, we here in Tuolumne County might need to start feeding ourselves. So I would like to suggest all of us, staff, employees, board members, and anybody else, to start thinking about stormwater capture and retention and a way to get the water back into the ditch when we need it. Because I think we should embrace our farming and ranching community that we have here, which has been somewhat decimated over the years, but they may become very, very important to us. On top of all that, I think we need to start talking to our beloved governor and the gang up there in Sacramento. And on 5/12, the California Coastal Commission unanimously rejected a 1.4 billion desalination plant in Huntington Beach, which would have provided 50 million gallons of water per day to Orange County residents. Poseidon Water, the contractor, has been trying for decades to get that desalination plant built. I think we need to bring this up to our state legislators and our wonderful governor. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, is there any other director that would like to speak? And seeing none, and there's no public comment, I will close the public forum and we will move to the consent calendar. Melissa, will you please read the item on the consent calendar?
Okay, minutes of the special board meetings of May 9th, 2022 and May 10th, 2022.
Any discussion on the minutes? Any member of the public wish to comment? No?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to approve the consent calendar. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Melissa, please call the vote.
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0 with Director Murphy absent.
Thank you, Melissa.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's move to regular business.
President Balin,
Yes.
if I may, Director Murphy called me yesterday, said she has a work conflict with today's meeting, so she asked if we could rearrange the agenda a little bit so she could be present for the first two items, if that's okay.
Okay, that's, that's really important stuff, so, how do you guys feel about that? Do we kind of consent to switch things around a little? Okay, great, so we've consented to that, and, could you please, read us then the new order? Melissa, you want to read us the new order so all the board has that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
The first item will be the operational update on the water and wastewater departments for April 2022. The second item will be Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Progress Report. The third item will be the implementation of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Water Shortage Contingency Plan as directed by Executive Order Number N722. The fourth item will be review of the draft water rate setting report, and the fifth item will be authorized issuing the Proposition 218 notice.
okay, thank you, and that, hopefully that this will give, Director Murphy some time to weigh in, because those two items are really important. And just for the record, because it's kind of confusing, the real item 1 was on the consent calendar. So that everything, so we all know that, okay. So even though it looks like we have 6 items, we really have 5 items, okay. Numbers aren't my strong suit, but I just want to make sure that we're not getting ourselves tied up in knots, or at least me. All righty, so then, let's move forward with the operational update on the water and wastewater departments, April 2022.
Good morning, board members, Eric Hall, Operations Director. We'll start with page 4, just talk a little bit about the reservoir levels that we're seeing. Pinecrest is pretty much full, and Lyons is the same way. PG&E runs them up and down a little bit this time of year because our system is so flashy. Water comes down quick and it slows down pretty quick, so just kind of let it do its thing and try and keep the flows similar coming down, off the spillways and things like that, but it's nice to see that they're full, so that's good. Page 6, the guys used the new ROV to do some tank inspections, which was really neat to see. Comstock tank underwater looked pretty darn good. Above the water line it's pretty rough. We knew it was pretty bad, but definitely needs to have some attention put to it. So, and the other 2 tanks that were both in-ground tanks that they inspected, they both looked pretty good too, because they relined them in the past. I don't remember when, but page 9, the distribution department, they've been working on it in the Millville and a bunch of different hydro stations, but they rebuilt kind of rehab one of the buildings we have there. They did a really, really good job. Sounds like the neighbors were pretty happy too. They cleaned it up, put a new roof on it, painted it. It looks a whole lot better than it did before. They did a very nice job with it. And then page 10, construction maintenance crew. They've been hard at it all over the place, but then on Phoenix Lake Road with the phase 1 of the Ridgewood intertie. We've had a few complaints about flagging, but overall we've had a lot of very positive feedback about it. I had Hewitt pull me aside down at regional one day and just say how shocked he was what these crews were getting done, how small they were, how clean the work was. He's just very impressed with what was happening. That was really, really nice to hear. And then at page 14, courts level was 50.50 on the staff. It's 834 acre feet. It's not great, but it was more than what we had last year. So that's good. So now we're gonna have to really lean on the ranchers to conserve, get through as long as we can. That's about all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, Director Kearns first and Director Raymond.
Just for future, how we doing? Are we still on track for the Curtis Creek school connection?
Yeah, it's all USA.
Yeah, they had a pre-construction meeting yesterday, and the contractor will either start this week with saw cutting, or he'll wait because it's a holiday, and so it's a little up in the air. You might see some activity this week out there, but most of it will start next week, certainly.
Perfect. Thanks. That's it. Thanks, Eric. Both Erics.
Any more questions, Director Kearns? Is that it?
I'm good.
Okay,
Thanks.
Director Raymond.
Okay, I've got a couple questions and a couple of comments. First of all, great report. There's so much information in this thing, it's amazing. And it pointed out to me, I'm really proud of what the staff and employees are doing. I mean, it's just, as I went through that report, there's project after project after project, and I don't know how you guys are getting it all done. I mean, it's just incredible. So anyway, kudos. USA's 44, are we finally starting to have those drop?
They come up, they go down, it's all over the place. It seems like it depends on what PG&E has going on for the most part.
Because that's such a time taker and expense for TUD.
Yeah.
I was looking at the amount of raw water customers, and it looks like the figure has gone up. Have we added some ditch customers or raw water
We've
people?
added a few this past year, yeah.
How many? Oh, you don't need to tell.
I think
three.
Three.
Oh, three?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was more than that by looking at that number. Then another thing that I was pretty amazed about is it looks like we're starting to get a break on the water main breaks. It's the numbers are way down. There was one break only in the report, and then there was 3 main leaks and 0 for the sewer. That's pretty darn good. We must be getting a handle on this.
Well, part of us are holding our breath. A little worried.
Where's the wood?
You know, mine's a wood knock on, please. But you know, yes, we've done a tremendous amount of work in the past several years. We've put in thousands of feet of new pipe and less full circle clamps and Band-Aids, right? So in that way, we know we're doing good. So, but yeah, they can come and go. And what I think I'm gonna hear is sort of repetitive to me as the ground dries and things start restricting, we could come up with some more leaks, but.
Yeah, we're not quite in leak season.
Well, still, that's pretty impressive, I thought, at low numbers. Then you were talking about tanks, the one that you guys used the drone on. And I guess my question is overall for all the tanks. When they get rehabbed, are they then mechanically vented so that that corrosion at the top of the tank doesn't occur nearly as soon?
I'll leave them up on that one.
Yeah, it's something that we evaluate case by case. We certainly put a passive ventilation so that if there's enough airflow, it will respire. But whether or not we put an actual fan on is a bit of a cost benefit analysis. Some of the tanks, like all new tanks, they will have forced air. Some of the older tanks, when we're doing rehab, it looks like, you know, passive ventilation is working fine, so we don't move forward with that. And then there's also the power issue and the noise of running those fans full.
Okay, and then my last comment, I guess, or question, either way you want to take it. What in the world is going out there in the standard? How come they have not started that water main?
Well, a number of things transpired. One is just getting pipe and fittings. Took a while. Actually, it was the fittings, not the pipe, that took quite some time. And then when the contractor realized that he was bumping up against the end of school, he wasn't overly anxious to run out and start the work knowing that school was still in session. So they will be starting this week. That we had a pre-construction meeting. They may saw cut this week, but you'll really see the activity ramp up next week. And we've been coordinating with the county, so they're fully aware of the project schedule and will be able to do their paving after construction's done. So we're on track and we'll be done before school resumes session. So it should be a very little, you know, inconvenience to the school.
That part's really good. I'm just a little concerned about all the connections that are gonna have to be made in the town of Standard. That's not a small job. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done out there.
Fortunately, the property owner has hired the same contractor as the district. So it's a very seamless operation. We don't have two contractors tripping over each other and trying to coordinate, you know, sequencing of work. It'll be done in a very orderly fashion by the same contractor, and we've had numerous meetings with the property owner, so we know exactly where the meters will be, and they know the route in which they'll connect all of those buildings to the new water main.
And is TUD gonna have to supply the meters in the boxes?
The meters are paid for by the property owner. The boxes, I'd have to check. I think that the boxes and the meters are paid for by the property owner, and the connections paid for by the property owner. What they're not paying for is capacity, because the capacity was already paid for when they connected to the SPI tank.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Director Ringen. All right, is there,
I
yes,
got
Director Boatwright.
comment. Eric, if we could move back to water tank rehabs.
any of the tanks that we have rehabbed, are they renewable energy such as solar running the ventilation on any of these tanks? Or is that worthwhile looking into to enhance a, natural ventilation?
We've tried solar, and we've tried hydro before, and we do, I think maybe, but not on the fan. The draw on the fan we haven't tried, to my knowledge, solar to power those fans. And I can't remember, David, I should know if they're, half horse or what size they are. It's worth looking at, but we haven't run into a situation where we've gone that route yet. And we have done hydro for like mag meters. We tried that at the Pedro Y tank. And in the end, we were able to just get another connection with the adjoining property owner. So it was a lot more stable to just use line power than to use hydro. But at zone 2, we had a little micro turbine that ran the telemetry, charged the batteries that ran the telemetry up there. So we do have that capability.
Very good. Eric Hall, question for you. The sludge that was moved for way down there regional, is that still on site or is that?
Yes,
Cool.
for Kiewit, that sludge, yeah, it's still on site.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Boatright. Is there any public comment on this item?
Or I got a couple of things I just want to ask or point out. So I want to know, so on the water supply, we're talking about, we're predicting right now the June 10th for the end of spill date. Is that
Yes.
still, I know this is a few weeks old. That's
Give or take a few days both ways, yeah.
So that's better than last year by a few days, so that's good. I thought I studied this too, and I think it's a great report, but I do study it. And I find it interesting when I look at the surface water demand from the difference between last year and this year is about 19% less. Any idea what that's attributed to?
I think it's quite a bit cooler
Cooler?
this year than it was last year. We had those late rains. This year, people aren't watering as much. Well, it's picking up this week.
Okay. And this last is more or less just a comment. I was looking at the distribution. They do a fair amount of their own leaks repairs, and the smaller service lateral leak repairs, right? One of those was in Peaceful Pines, which is a really small system up there. It's on a groundwater system, and any kind of leak out there can be a deal. So it's important for us to get out there. But what I really want to relate to you and the public is that this time of year, especially during droughts, extreme droughts, the public, thankfully is very aware of any sort of leaks that we get out there in the system. They're quick, hopefully, to report the leaks to us, and we appreciate that. Sometimes it's a bit frustrating from the public's view, right? Because they might report the leak on Monday and would expect that leak might be fixed on Wednesday. And so there's a little bit that goes into this, right? It depends on the size of the leak, the severity of the leak. If it's an emergency, we can go and fix it right away. If it's a weeper, we might have 6 or 7 or 8 of those weepers out there in our system or more, and they have to be USAID, and it just takes time. So anyway, just kind of prepping everybody for what's going to happen this summer if we do have a few more leaks. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, any member of the public present? Before we move on, yes.
Madam President, I noticed that Mr. Rosasco, a member of our public, has come into the meeting. He may not be aware that we've changed the order of the agenda today.
Okay.
So Mr. Rosasco, I don't know which agenda item you were present for or wanted to speak on.
I want to listen to the discussion on the rate hike.
Okay. And just so you're aware, we've changed the item order of the agenda so that it's coming in at the end of the meeting.
So in other words, that's coming up on the agenda. We've reversed the order so that one of our board members can attend. So you haven't missed anything.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, any member in the Zoom land? I don't know what else to call it. Okay. All right. Great. Well, this is for information only. I agree it's a great report. I recognize that, You know, reports take time, comprehensive reports, especially to capture the activity with pictures, which is really great because they are, you are forming that wonderful administrative record. That's really wonderful to go back and look at. So thank you on that. Okay, so that will conclude that item. So working our way up to the next item, that would be Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Progress Report.
Bear with me here one moment. Get this set up. It's nice because I can tell if it's actually, oh, wait a second. There it is.
Corey, is it possible to put the side screen on so members of our audience can view it as well?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay,
Or maybe I need to stop sharing first. Let me try this again.
Are all those aerial shots done with a drone?
They are, yes, they
It's
are.
pretty incredible.
It is such a handy tool that I never realized we would use as much as we do.
I remember a number of years ago, I brought that up during
Oh, you know what?
a meeting, and Don Perkins says, I want one.
Yeah, we really love it, and one of our engineers seems very pleased with himself every time he uses it. I won't name any names.
I will.
excuse me, I want to make sure that members of our audience can see the PowerPoint. So Nathan, can you see that okay?
I
or-
can see it fine.
Okay, all right.
Very good. Well, good morning, board. Eric Johnson, your district engineer. This is the monthly progress report on the ongoing Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Improvements Project. I'll be fairly brief, but always open to questions. We've changed the title slide where in the past it showed kind of the board and the groundbreaking and some of that. But what you see now is, you know, the plant prior to construction with our 3 polishing ponds and our overflow or pond A basin. And now what you can see is that the site's been transformed. We're in full swing with grading operations, and we've been reduced from 3 polishing ponds down to the pond 2, the middle pond there. And so our operators are having to be really on it, on point and monitoring everything at the facility because there isn't a lot of margin for error. Fortunately, we're in the dry season. We don't have the rainfall and the I&I coming in through the plant, but our operators have done just a fantastic job working with Kiewit. We have weekly meetings, and then they're in contact on a daily basis to make sure chlorine deliveries and other aspects of operations of the plant can continue while construction's underway. In the past, you've seen this same exact exhibit, and the red stars denote work in progress. In the past, we've had like maybe 2 or 3 red stars, and they've all focused down here, which is the south process station and the secondary clarifiers, and then we have the filters and the chlorine contact basin. Well, if you've driven down the highway, you can see those big concrete circular structures. They're essentially done. There's all the internals still go into those. There's not really a rush to get all of that installed when it won't go into service for another year approximately. But now you see a whole bunch of other red stars as you come into the site on the road. Pond 1 has been completely filled in, and the conduits and the underslab piping, all those trench lines have been dug, everything's been stubbed up, and they are pouring those and then backfilling those, and then they'll be pouring the slab for the building quite soon. Over here is the headworks where we have the screening and the grit removal, and the grit chamber has been excavated down into the ground, and they'll be pouring the slab for that here, I believe later this week. And then this is our solids handling building. It will be essentially like a 2-story building with a mezzanine level where the sludge, the dewatering press will be, and the solids will fall down into the trailer, the truck. And the trucks will enter the site through here. The trailer will be parked in here until it's full, and then it'll be hauled off site. As we currently do, we take everything to Synagro, all of our biosolids, but this will be a much more efficient operation. And then if you've been out there, we'll show some pictures. You can easily see the delineation, the outline of the emergency storage basin and the stormwater detention basin as well. So lots of activity out there. I will mention there's not been a lot of change orders on the job. We have about $3.5 million in contingency reserved in case of change orders, which, bless you, is we expect, there to be change orders. And so fortunately, I do have to report to the board, we've had a few change orders at this point. One related to our PG&E power service, which was about $10,000. The plans weren't exactly clear on what needed to occur there. The piping coming into the site from the sewer line up here, it's not shown on this, but the sewer line coming down into the site, we hit some old concrete walls, which we believe were a part of the old wastewater treatment plant that the city had, or part of the old dump or something, some other structure there. And so they required a fair bit of work to get through those walls. That was a $6,500 change order. And then I think you guys know, we mentioned previously that there were a fair number of tires in the berm here, and we removed those. We have those stockpiled, and we will be looking at a way to properly dispose of those tires. That was about a $15,000 change order. And then lastly, we're in kind of the negotiation phase on, there's a fair amount of water. We knew there'd be a fair amount of water in this area. Certainly David's seen that over his years of service there. But our design had an under drain system, but we really, after we dug through and saw how much water was coming into the site, we decided it was necessary to do some redesign. And so we're adding more piping, more drain rock, some other aspects here. And our concern is that if we don't do that, this will be lined, and that liner will bubble or possibly rupture if you get too much water pressure from the ground coming up into the liner. So that's kind of where we're at in current phases of construction. As far as the financial aspects, we're about it says 19.19%, obviously. That's very exact. We're about 20% done at this point on budget. We're gonna crest over into the USDA loan after we expend our portion. We go into the loans, we're moving into the loan portion, and that will require Steve and his staff to jump through a few more hoops in order to get that money transferred from the bank to TUD so that he can facilitate payment to the contractor. We like to show this to the board just so there's no surprises. Kind of a dashboard view, and we want the blue to be proportional to the percent complete. Of course, that doesn't always work out here. We've got different buckets. Legal, it's only a $25,000 item, and see no issues there. Environmental, we really don't see any issues looming on the horizon, so we might even be under budget there. I'll jump to construction with the exception of those change orders. We're doing fine on construction. Inspection, special inspections is under budget for this time. Our bond council was a one-time expense and is done, and then the financing is already a prescribed schedule for our financing costs, so I don't expect any surprises there. The one area we're watching and concerned about is the engineering cost. It is disproportionately high given the 20% complete. And so the $3.5 million contingencies that you see way over on the right side, you'll start seeing some orange creep up in that as we pull from contingencies to backfeed some of these other items. And I've kind of covered all this, you know, what you can look forward to coming up is that building A, you'll see that slab, the footings for building B, and they'll start actually going vertical, and we'll be able to see the outline of the buildings taking shape there. And then the south process station, they've been working on that, and those walls are nearly complete, and then the chlorine contact basin. So stop me anytime if there are any questions. Here's some other photos again from the drone. Great perspective on what's going on. And south process station here, clarifiers, chlorine contact basin, level pad for the buildings. And then this is much farther along than when this photo was taken, you know, a couple weeks ago. The emergency storage basins here, and then the stormwater basin. And then here is some of the concrete and rebar formwork for that south process station. It's a multi-level structure, and building A, and then more of the same. Happy to answer any questions.
Director Rena.
Yeah, I'm amazed at the amount of rebar that's in that project. The water that you were talking about for that basin, is that coming from Woods Creek? Is that seepage from Woods Creek or what?
You know, it appears to be a subsurface flow that we've known about, but just the volume now that we've excavated is more. It must be coming from up gradient from Woods Creek on that hillside. I think, and Director Boatwright may know more, but I think when Caltrans did their portion of the bypass, it may have impacted that subsurface flow because it's been flowing through our site in the drainage courses to the east or southeast of the site, and it's ponded in our lower ponds for years. It's just now that we're down, you know, 12, 15 feet, we're lower than we've ever been on the site. We've really intercepted that flow, and so it's important that we stop and get the design right so we don't pop the liner. The last thing we want is to have brand new liner and then have the wet season hit and see all these bubbles form, because that basin should be empty most of the time. It's an emergency storage basin the guys will use only during high flow events.
It's just a shame we couldn't have done the drain line with rock in a ditch prior to the site and have it flow, you know, by gravity down.
Well, we are doing that. Yes, that it was an option. I'm trying to look at a better perspective here. This drainage basin here will intercept some of the flow. The flow is flowing this way, if you can see my cursor. So this drainage basin will intercept some of that flow, and then it channelizes it off-site. This emergency storage basin will have a glorified French drain system. And it will also have clean outs, and it will also have, you know, drain rock, a layer of 8 inches of drain rock on the bottom. So anything that seeps into it, it should be able to distribute and find its way into, it's like a herringbone layout for the drainage system.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Director Rena. Any other director have Director Boatwright?
Eric, on that under drain, from the original plans, are we looking at twice as much under drain, 3 times as much?
The geotech just yesterday recommended that we add a few more laterals, like for cleanouts, mostly for cleanouts, but that we add an additional 4 inches of drain layer rock over the entire bottom. He said that would be more important in order to transmit water from wherever it comes in along the perimeter to the drainage trenches. The concern was that if you didn't have that drain layer, you just have soil that could blind off the routes for water to migrate to the drainage trenches, and then you'd have pressure build up, and then you'd damage the line.
Will the district be responsible for creating a spring going into Woods Creek as far as
I believe that water was making it to Woods Creek, just in a different route. We've intercepted it farther upstream, and it will find its way into the perimeter drainage channel. I'm seeing, oh, sorry, this is very quick. So this right here on the lower portion is the new drainage channel. As David knows, there's already a drainage channel in this. This one will just be larger and deeper so that we can handle some of the storm flows that we've seen on that site. Just a few years ago when we had it in February, that huge rainstorm where people were kayaking in downtown Sonora. The plant actually had flows overwhelming it, coming, up near the headworks and into Pond A at that time. So this project will address that and intercept all the upstream flows and bring them around the side of the site.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any members of the public wish to comment? And anyone in our Zoom audience wish to comment?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, great. Well, this is information only, so really appreciate it. And if Jennifer had a hand on that, please extend a thank you to her as well. And so with that, we will move on to our next item. So Melissa, would you please read the next item?
Okay, implementation of phases 1 and 2 of the water shortage contingency plan as directed by executive order number N722.
Lisa Westbrook is gonna present that for us.
Okay.
Good morning, board members and public. Great to see everyone today. So this all stems from an executive order that Governor Newsom signed in March 2022. And in that executive order, it stated that they would be rolling out different levels of conservation. If people aren't aware, the whole state is actually in a drought. And I actually have a little diagram, here we are. May 17th, look at all that red, not a good sign. But the good thing is we're much better than 2015. At this time right now, the state is in extreme drought at 60%. In 2015, we were in the dark purple at 50%. So we are better than 2015. But as a whole, the state needs to do some kind of action. So that's why Governor Newsom actually rolled out his N722. And in that N722 executive order, it is really emphasizing Governor Newsom of asking all Californians to really do their part to conserve water. And he did a voluntary conservation request of 15%, and a lot of people are not doing that and following those orders. In fact, in March, it was only at 19% overall, so people still aren't doing that great. So the executive order requires any urban water agency, and that's what TUD is considered an urban water agency, that we must implement level 2 water shortage contingency plan. And the district did adopt that in 2021. That was our 2020 water shortage contingency plan. Listed in the water shortage contingency plan, TUD has to expand public outreach for our customers to conserve water, really prohibit any runoff of outside watering, repair any leaks on a timely manner, and actually start limiting outside watering to specific times. So this was all originally stated in the executive order by Governor Newsom. Well, today, the state water board's actually meeting as we speak to roll out actually what they're expecting as urban drought response actions. They are reviewing different actions that would then go into place June 10th. And so the district would be following whatever those recommendations are. Some of those recommendations are, of course, increased public outreach for water conservation. The state is also really pumping up funding for advertising on the SaveOurWater.com campaign. You'll be seeing radio ads and billboard ads all throughout the state trying to urge people to conserve. And so the district will follow whatever the State Water Board adopts today, and we have until June 10th to implement those. But as I was mentioning, public outreach is one of the things. Implement and enforce a rule limiting landscape irrigation to no more than 2 days per week, and no irrigation between 10 and 6, and prohibit the use of potable water for non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional sites. So there's some rules that are gonna roll out. Once the State Water Board implements whatever they're doing today, the district will follow suit. So probably most likely the June 14th board meeting, we will actually be adopting some kind of resolution saying the district is rolling into, we have a phase 2 water conservation and our water rules and regs. So we would roll into that and do whatever the state is requesting of us.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there any comments from the board?
Yes,
I just have a question on the stage 2 for TUD customers. What has that looked like in the past?
well, the water shortage contingency plan is new to the district and we just recently adopted it. So in the board packet, it's kind of vague, actually. It's up to what we follow with the State Water Board. So on our phase 2, we have expand public outreach, which we'll be doing. And customers must repair leaks, breaks, and in a timely manner. And we usually do really good with that, and we have an excellent customer service staff. If they are doing meter readings and they see a high level, we'll get someone out there as quickly as possible to check the leak and repair that. And landscaping, prohibit any runoff. It's really using water wisely. We don't want sidewalks wet and things like that. And then we will be most likely following what the State Water Board is restricting on water irrigation. So limiting hours 10 to 6 and 2 days a week. So that will probably be coming most likely in June.
Is there a way that we could do a little instructional video on our website on how to read your water meter? Because the reason I ask for this is last summer, for the first time, we went over our water usage, but we didn't know it until 4 months later because of the way that the bi-monthly cycle and the way that the billing works. We had a bill sometime in the fall that was reflective of our use in the summer. And we would have changed that use had we been aware of it at that moment. But I don't like to not put like I know as TUD, we can't be alerting everybody to what's happening with their water at any time, but I also, in talking with people, I don't know how to read our street water meter, and I've been meaning to make an appointment to learn how to do that. But rather than having everybody have to do that, I was wondering if there's a way that we could put out sort of a idiot's guide to reading your water meter.
That's a great idea. Just want to comment on that. So probably about now we have 60% automated meters in the district.
Close.
So you can actually see like it will be spinning. Okay, if there's a leak. But some of the old ones don't really have that capability. It's hard to read. So we could say, most customers could follow that video instantly.
Yeah, anything's better than nothing, right?
Couple of comments just to back Lisa up, Director Murphy. First of all, from a customer service standpoint, ever since the big drought and conservation, 2014, we operate out here like we're always in stage 2. There's really not a distinction because of our supply, because of everything else. So we consider ourselves always to be in that stage 2. Second of all, your exact point about a video came up and was brought up by one of the customer service representatives back in 2015. Part of the issue is we have a lot of different meters out there and different locations. So what we've taken to is Kalisha, our main phone operator, she actually has taken pictures or had the guys take pictures in the field. So she has several different ones. So usually she'll talk a customer through it. If they're interested, some customers not, we'll send the guys out to show them if need be. But we have sent emails on it. So it's kind of hard to have a generic one on the website, but any customer can contact them. And then anytime we're notified, like if they put in for a leak adjustment or we've noticed a leak, we'll follow up with them and actually show them, here's the meter and the leak has to be fixed and some of these other ones. So it's a great suggestion. We kind of doing a workaround right now, but definitely anybody that's interested, you can start with any of the customer service and they'll do that. But some of them, like you said, they're unique meters.
whether they're auto read or not, or manual or
It gets
whatever.
complicated.
But, you know, everybody should know where it is, but every day we get calls, I don't know how to turn off my water. You know, that's a homeowner thing, not us, but usually our guys will go out there and help them any way we can, so.
I'm just thinking, like, for us, we would have corrected it at the time had we known. And it wasn't an exceptionally large overage, so TUD wouldn't have contacted us going, oh my gosh, you know, you're wasting tons of water. But we would have self-corrected had we understood what was happening.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of people in that boat. And in years where we're trying to be a little more careful, I was just thinking when you brought up the leaks that the more that we can be informed about what's going on in our own homes and our own systems and be part of the solution rather than the problem. But sometimes it takes a little education.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Rainey?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, real simple way, maybe not to read the meter, but to know whether or not you have a leak is just to go through the house, make sure every faucet, and check around the outside, make sure all the faucets are off, and then go back and look at the meter and maybe see where the needle's at, and then come back in about 5-10 minutes. If it's moved, you got a leak.
Yeah, it gets a little more complicated with the outdoor watering systems,
Oh,
which was what ours was.
A lot of times the guilty culprit's the toilet, which is sometimes hard to do. We have toilet tablets out there.
Yeah.
That will actually change colors, and so we make those available as well, but
Yeah, ours was our drip system.
those are hard to find,
Yeah,
but they add up.
So just to wrap it up, so we will be hearing today what the State Water Board decides to adopt on that, the regulations, but most likely they will be implementing something, and we'll just follow whatever is recommended. And then the other thing is, you know, the state, as I said, is in a 3rd-year drought, so most likely Governor Newsom or the State Water Board may be saying that we have to do 20% conservation or whatever that number would be. So that may be happening sometime in the future.
Thank you. Any member of the public wish to comment? Any member, Cory?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, thank you. I have one comment, and that is, in this executive order, and granted, it's tough to do something so broad-based to apply statewide. However, one of the items talks about restricting all well drilling, and that's item number 9, I believe. And we don't have to answer it right now, but I have had concerns for a long time about well drilling, especially in areas up above Artesian Springs, especially in the limestone belt, because I know that that does affect some senior water rights in that area around Columbia. And so I, at some point, and maybe Jesse, you may want to figure this out too, is well drilling, for an example, I know that they're drilling a lot of wells or several wells and have been in the Springfield area, which may affect the spring down there at the trout farm. And I'm just wondering if this executive order applies to well drilling up here. They mentioned groundwater, which we have fractured aquifer, and we have perched aquifers in the Columbia area. I just want to know if this applies to us.
Director Balin, I know the county is definitely watching this. I was on a drought task force meeting with Dory Beats, and she said the county is concerned about what the state's going to be imposing, and they're watching that as well with their legal counsel on the planning and the permitting.
President Balin, Jesse Barton, General Counsel. There are 2 provisions in the governor's executive order dealing with groundwater wells. There's one provision dealing with groundwater wells being drilled within a basin subject to SGMA. And then there is a provision that applies to any well, anywhere in California. And what it boils down to is the county that issues the well drilling permit in a area that is not regulated or subject to SGMA, the county has to make certain findings before that well permit will be issued. And so in Tuolumne's case, you guys don't have any groundwater basins subject to SGMA. And so that means that the county of Tuolumne will have to make certain findings before issuing a groundwater well permit, drilling permit, after the effective date of this executive order. I can tell you from experience that other clients that have been waiting to drill wells, the wells that are I can't say this with absolute certainty, but I just know from speaking to other clients that wells that are probably being drilled right now, those well permits were issued months ago. And it has taken this long to find a well driller available to book that well drilling date. And so I suspect the wells being drilled right now under in Tuolumne County, or at least in other counties where I have clients, they've been waiting months. And they've had their well permit and they've just been waiting months in the queue for their opportunity for that well to be drilled. So it's possible that the wells you see being drilled right now were issued under permits prior to the issuance of this executive order.
Okay, thank you. I have no further comments. If there's no further comments, this is do we have to approve this? This is going down, whether we like it or not, so.
So in a couple of weeks, we may have to pass a resolution to
Okay.
formally adopt our phase 2 of our water shortage.
Thanks.
And President Balin, I should also add that if the wells being drilled are solely for domestic purposes that are not expected to drill more than, I think it was 2 acre feet, those wells can continue to be drilled. And that may also apply to some of the wells that you saw being drilled.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, thank you, Lisa, for the news. Yeah. Okay. All right, Melissa, would you please read our next item?
Okay, review of the draft water rate study report.
Well, President Balin, again, we have Ralph Ellison, Nancy here, and Steve to go through this final draft rate plan. So Steve and Nancy.
Is Nancy on?
Yes.
I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good
Morning.
morning, everybody. Steve, do you want me to go ahead and share my screen immediately,
Yes.
or do you have a little introduction for us?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you got it. Hey. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Board of Directors. It's great to see you all again. So TUD staff has been really hard at work over the past year to pull together all of the various components of the rate study. So the draft rate study report included in the board packet is really a culmination of all of that work and a documentation of the entire rate study process, which we went through. So the report is divided into 3 different sections. The first is an executive summary where we have an overview of the entire rate study process, including a review of the Proposition 218 requirements, as well as a summary of revenue needs and the proposed rates developed in this study. The second section is for revenue needs. This goes into more detail and documents the revenue needs, including the specific line items and the operating and maintenance costs, some of those miscellaneous revenues, and annual reserve funding. And then finally, in the last section, we have the documentation of the rate calculation process, which includes how we, calculate the equivalent meter units, our proposed rates, and finally the customer impacts, which we'll also see in this presentation. Also included in your packet today is a draft Proposition 218 notice. I have a screenshot here of just the rate tables for the multi-year proposed fixed charges for treated metered customers, raw metered customers, and raw unmetered customers here. We have the incremental increases as well as the combined monthly fixed charges listed on this notice. Okay, So the next couple of slides hopefully should be more of a review since we've covered this in the prior board meeting earlier this month. But really the objective of this project is to develop rates that generate the amount of revenue needed to responsibly operate and maintain the PG&E owned portion of the water system. So our model is based on data and estimates provided by TUD staff, and the revenue needs include 3 different components. So the first is the operating and maintenance costs of the PG&E system. The second is reserve funding. So we are building up reserves for the district to set aside for operating, emergency, and rate stabilization. That will total approximately $1.5 million combined at the end of the 5-year study period. Okay, and then we also include some miscellaneous revenues to reduce the revenue need here, and that primarily consists of revenue generated from hydropower facilities. So once we add all of that up, we get our approximate revenue need of $4.5 million each year to operate and maintain the PG&E portion of the water system. Okay, so this slide here, we have a little bit more detail on those revenue needs, including how much is in the categories for operating and maintenance, miscellaneous revenues, and reserve fundings. So the bottom line here is what we show for the total revenue need to fund the PG&E system each year. The draft rate study report included in your packet includes much more detail on the revenue needs, so I won't be spending too much time on this slide. Okay, so the next 2 slides, we show the additional monthly revenue charges for both metered and unmetered customers. On this slide, we see the charges for metered customers, including treated and raw water customers. Keep in mind that the numbers that you see on this slide are the incremental increases each year. And so these will be added this first year right here, if you can see my pointer, these will be added to the district's current monthly fixed charges for metered customers. And then each year thereafter, these are the incremental increases on top of that. Okay. And then similarly, here we show the incremental rate, additional revenue charges for unmetered customers. These are raw water customers that are charged based on miners inches per day. And so same thing, starting in September of 2022 this year, we add these numbers to the existing monthly fixed charges for these customers, and then incremental increases all the way out until 2026. Okay, so now that we've looked at the detailed incremental rates and additional revenue needed, we can go into probably what is on everyone's mind right now, which is how will this affect customer water bills? So a couple of reminders before I get into the more detailed calculations of the water bills. First is that TUD customers are billed bi-monthly. So each bill will include 2 months of service. The sample customer water bills in this presentation, as well as the rates on the Proposition 218 notice, are shown as monthly. So the additional revenue charges that we are including in this presentation are added to the district's current fixed charges in order to recover the cost for the PG&E water system. And as a reminder, customers with larger meter sizes pay proportionately more than customers with smaller meter sizes. This follows a very similar structure to the district's current fixed charges. Okay, so there are 2 main components of a customer water bill. We're going to be looking at a treated water bill today. So the fixed charge is a flat charge by meter size, and it includes an allotment of 400 cubic feet of water each month. And then there's also a quantity rate component, which is charged per 100 cubic feet used above the 400 cubic feet allotment. So we add both of these together, that forms the total water bill. Okay. So moving into, adding some numbers to this framework that we just reviewed, keep in mind that this is for a residential customer using treated water with a 1-inch meter or smaller. Okay, so this makes up the vast majority of TUD's customer base, but for the few customers that do have larger meter sizes than this, they will be paying proportionately more than what we're showing on this slide. Okay, so the fixed charge today is $64.50 per month. Again, that includes that 400 cubic feet of water used each month. And so starting in September of this year, that monthly fixed charge will be increasing if the rates are adopted to $81.37, which is a $16.87 increase. Okay, and then the quantity rate is $3.40 per 100 cubic feet used above that 400 cubic feet allotment. So we add that together and we get the water bill. So now that we know how residential customer water bills are calculated, we can look at a sample customer bill for that customer using 1,000 cubic feet of water per month. That's approximately 7,500 gallons per month. Okay, so today they are paying a fixed charge of $64.50. Their quantity rate charge will be $20.40 for their water usage above 400 cubic feet of water per month. And so their total monthly bill is $84.90. So if the rates are adopted starting in September of this year, that fixed charge will increase to $81.37. The quantity charge for this September, as well as through the next 5 years, that will not be changing. So that stays at $20.40. So the total monthly water bill for this customer in September will be $101.77. That's an increase of $16.87 per month. Okay, so skipping forward to the end of the 5-year cycle, so by September of 2026, which is the last year of the proposed rates, that fixed charge will be increasing to $92.31. Again, the quantity charge stays the same throughout the period, so it will stay at $20.40 for this customer, and their total monthly water bill will be $112.71. So compared between September of this year and September of 2026, that's an additional increase of $10.94 for this customer. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at more of a detailed customer bill, we can now look at a comparison of bills for neighboring agencies. So keep in mind, these are bills that were calculated for a residential customer with a 1-inch meter using 1,000 cubic feet of water per month. So what we're seeing here was developed by TUD staff to compare the different bills for a couple of different agencies around the region. So the current TUD rate is more towards the lower end of the spectrum, and if the rates are adopted in September of this year, the TUD proposed rates in the bottom here will be a little bit more towards the average to upper end of that spectrum. Okay. That is it for my presentation. I know I went through a lot of information in a little bit of time. So I'm happy to take any questions, or if we want to go back to any of the specific slides, I'm happy to do so. Thank you.
So I'll jump in here real quick. Thank you, Nancy. Before we start, I think it's important to spell out, we have 2 agenda items today. This first one is a draft rate study, 19-page document, it's included in your board. We're really providing that as a discussion matter. Ultimately, when we adopt the rates later on, Nancy will bring it back, it'll be finalized. But this is opportunity to present to the board, to the public. This is what the rates were built on, this is the rate study. We can have questions, we can have, debates over if anything should be modified or changed or whatever, but all this work has gone to getting this discussion copy to you. The next item that's involved, and I think you all have seen the timeline before, but the next agenda item is the actual rate notice. So in this 218 process, if we're proposing these increases, we're required to notice all our customers, both through a public hearing as well as through an actual mailing to each customer, landlords, and tenants as well. So that's the second item, and that item is very specific in, here's what it is. We would like to approve mailing it, and then we will mail it. Typically, it's mailed within 7 days after approval. So this item's discussion, the 19-page detail, what the study's based on. The next one that she's showing here, and I think Lisa actually has an example of what it will look like, will be the next item where we are asking the board to approve the mailing of it. So I think this is important for any questions that haven't been addressed in previous, like Nancy said, she previously provided the rate study components. They're essentially unchanged, more detail, more finalized. So again, welcome discussion, input, or whatever. Then we'll move to the next item as that goes. Jeff.
Okay, a clarification. We briefly touched on this a few meetings ago. In Nancy's example there, it was for a 1-inch meter connection. I just want to confirm that if you're a ratepayer for a residential home, whether you're using a 5/8 by 3/4, a 3/4 meter, or a 1-inch meter, it's all the same rate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The previous board in the 2015 rate study, when we changed our tiers, we also went to 1-inch and smaller. We just felt that was more equitable, more fair. Some districts do it differently, but that's what was adopted in 2014 as part of that rate study and continues. The rate's in effect right now. It's any meter 1-inch or smaller.
Thank you.
I have a question. Nancy, the comparison to our neighboring agencies, is that done apples to apples? Where, say like Calaveras County, is that a monthly water bill at $150?
I think TUD staff would be better suited to answer this question, but I believe so, yes. This is a apples to apples comparison as to the best of our ability.
Yes, that's correct. It is apples to apples. Some agencies bill monthly, some bill bi-monthly like we do. We transferred it all to on a monthly basis. What it doesn't include are any surcharges that those agencies may have, which would only make their rates higher. But those were really difficult to analyze because they're on a case-by-case, geographical, location specific kind of. So we just took base rate and consumption, apples to apples, 7,500 gallons per month. And some agencies have more allotted in their base charge, some have none. And so it's all worked out on a very equitable basis to come up with those comparisons.
With the proposed mailer and stuff, the concern I have is a confusion between monthly and bi-monthly, the way we're showing it. I.e. the 1687 is actually 33 and some change that'll show up on the bill, so that we're gonna get feedback on that.
We are, I think we've struggled with this ever since we went to bi-monthly billing. I think in 2015, we had these same sort of questions, and with Draft Telus and with us, we really wanted to address this as best we can. So you can see that Nancy was very repetitive in her assertion that what we're showing is monthly. However, you understand we bill bi-monthly. We didn't want to hide in, we didn't want to glamify anything, we just wanted to be able to say what we have to say. However you do it, it's going to be confusing, but we know we're going to field questions.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Murphy.
As long as we're on this slide, and I understand the complicated nature of creating the rate change for what we're doing right now and the importance of it. But I want to point out something that I think is something that we need to work on, the equitability of things as we move forward as a district. And one of these things, as we're looking at this, we are the supplier, right, for Twain Arts CSD of wholesale water. And with this rate increase, with the water districts that we wholesale water to, because I think there's under 10, 8-ish, that we supply water to. And on this rate study, when I was looking at it, if you look at, like, and I'm going to use Twain Harte as the example because they're the one up here. When you look at the 1,600 customers that they're serving with the water that is coming from this system that we are taking over the O&M for, each of those customers will be paying cents on the dollars compared to the TUD customers that will be getting this bi-monthly increase of almost $34. The Twain Harte customers will be getting maybe I don't know what it is, 40-cent increase or something, because of the way that we wholesale water and the way that that is dealt with in this rate study. And I think that's just something that we need to look at going forward, because the people who we, not people, and eventually to the customers for those water districts are getting the same benefit that the TUD customers are on our securing these water rights and upkeeping the dams in the system as every single TUD ratepayer is. And so I feel that piece, I'm not going to put it as a red flag for stopping this, but I think it's something that we need to look at as we're moving forward to make sure that we're being equitable on that.
Thank you. Yes, Director Kearns.
Yeah, just one more comment, tagging on to Director Boatright's comments and Eric's answer, Eric Johnson's answer. The surcharges, glad that came up. I'm a former Matt Dowling customer. We have a surcharge. It's not going to pay off, I think, 30 or 31, something like that. I get this question a lot from my neighbors. Surcharges are not affected by this rate increase, correct? They stay the same. They will pay off as they were always intended to pay off, and that portion of our rate bill is unaffected.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that's out there. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on the structure for the fixed base rate. When we look at that chart, the comparison chart, the bar graph, yeah, okay. Of these comparative agencies, are a lot of them also on the fixed structure as well?
Yes. You know, I struggle with this. I think it's important in here, but every district's unique. You know, the number of treatment plants, the age of the infrastructure, whether or not they're automated meters. I mean, it varies so widely from district to district. And the same token, the board, like Calaveras, their board feels very differently about meter sizes and surcharges and how they do that. But essentially all of these districts that I'm aware of have a fixed component in there. It's something that's changed over the years. You know, back in early 2000, the State Water Board wanted everybody to go to consumptive rates. 75% of your charge should be consumptive and everything else. Well, that's fine for somebody like San Diego who buys a gallon and sells a gallon, because then it's just a buy and sell arrangement. But for a lot of these districts like us, we're 75 to 80% fixed, whether we turn on a single faucet or not. You know, we're not going to fire people or sell trucks based on conservation or based on a drought or whatever else. So this district has made a dedicated effort to go more in that line. And today we're about 75% of our revenue is coming from fixed. And that's made a huge difference in the financial solvency of this district. and the ability to put money back into CIP. And so when we looked at needing these additional funds, that's one of the first questions that Raf Tellis asked, is this tied in any way to quantity of water? And it's not. You know, these costs that we're saying, these additional costs are the same whether we're using more water or less water or no water at all. So that's why it was imperative from the get-go that this additional charge be solely on fixed base.
Thank you. And I understand it's each one of them is different. I mean, Nevada Irrigation District, for example, they have 6,000 raw water customers, irrigation customers. And so could you, just for the sake of this meeting, itemize what the fixed for an average treated water customer, what that fixed rate actually pays for? Like distribution, storage, that kind of thing. What is personnel? What is in that fixed structure?
As far as types of expenses, yeah, I don't know where I'm really following. I mean, obviously our water starts, you know, from the supply issue, comes through raw, goes to treated, goes to distribution, down the road.
Okay, so let me just maybe put it this way. What are the treated customers, 14,000, correct?
Right.
What are they paying for that the raw water users are not paying for in the structure? Do they both pay distribution O&M costs?
Well, you know, TUD operates as one entity. Now, of the water that comes through the supply, 60% of it ends up going to the treated plants. So when we take our total expenses and our total rate structure, we're looking at 60% of that going to the treated customers, and then the 40% would be treated going to the raw water customers. But what we're really talking about here is this cost, there is no differential between those two, if you will. You know, the acquisition of the water rights, the acquisition of the supply and all of that, that's how this was made, and then we proportionately pass that along. And that's where the, that's where the other costs, as far as how much water is included and what the base charges are right now. But for this additional expense, it's based on the total and allocated under the same methodology.
I'm gonna try to re-ask the question and see, what are the components that make up our capacity fees, our base rate? What are the
capacity fees?
Base rate, the base rate. What are there certain components that make up our base rate? Supply, treatment, or I'm off base there.
I mean, those would be I guess, the overall system elements. I'm tending to go to labor, fuel, electricity, chemicals, permits, regulatory fees, supplies, training, education, safety, public relations. I mean, we have about 50 categories of different expenses that make up P&D's operations for water. I don't know if that helps. That was helpful.
It does. I'm seeing a ditch committee meeting on the horizon to really understand without taking up time here. Go ahead, Director Boatright.
Maybe I can help. Steve, our raw water customers have a base rate that they pay?
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, is a portion of our potable water base rate equal to paying for raw water distribution? I think is more the question, so that there's a balance between potable water customer and a raw water customer. Is that where the question was coming from?
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, we have a distribution system and it goes to raw water users. It goes to, which then they have their own little treatment plants, some of them do, there's irrigation customers. And then the distribution also goes to treatment plants where the water is treated to potable use and it then is distributed in treated pipes. So I'm assuming that the raw water customers in their base rate, the treated stuff and the chemicals and all that is not part of that bill.
In the rate component, that's correct.
Okay,
The rate component for a raw water customer is significantly less than the treated water customer.
okay. And I do understand that, you know, we're all in this together. You know, an example is the wastewater treatment plant. Many TUD customers are not a sewer customer, okay, but the whole county is the beneficiary of that plant. So I really understand, you know, the trying to find the balance. I appreciate that, Steve, trying to find the balance, and I would like to maybe follow up at another time, though, also, to really understand it. So thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Director Murphy.
Yeah, so I just for clarification for myself and anyone who might be on Zoom. When we're looking at these rates, we are looking at the rate increase based off of the operation and maintenance of the system that we will be acquiring from PG&E. And that system involves Pinecrest Reservoir, Strawberry Dam, Lyons Reservoir, and through this whole part of the PG&E clearly doesn't do any water treatment. So when we are talking about this and looking at this and the rate changes, we are looking at it from the perspective of this water is just, this water is snowmelt that has come down, been captured, and that we're moving. And that everyone has an equal part in, whether you're wholesale, whether you're raw, or whether you're treated. For this, we are all equally invested in it at the same, this is untreated water, snowmelt coming down, captured, moved, before it gets to any of the rest of the TUD system, where within the TUD system, we've already got our rates that look at raw versus treated. But from, I guess, the perspective I'm looking from is everybody shares equally in this O&M, correct?
That's correct. Everybody benefits.
Everybody has, yeah, this, nobody can function without this water, and nothing is done extra to this water for one side or another side of the house.
Nancy, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree.
Thank you.
Okay, great, good discussion. Any other questions or concerns from the board? Okay, any member of the public audience here wish to speak?
Thank you for the opportunity. This is Nathan Rosasco, and I'll make it clear, first of all, I am a reclamation water user and a ditch user. And I'm also a member of the Swan County Farm Bureau and chairman of the water committee. So I have to point that out because at this point in time, I'm really representing the water committee as the chairman in Farm Bureau. Just for some clarification, I had a couple questions. During the 5 years ago when we did the rate hike, we were highly involved, had a lot of meetings trying to look at it from an ag user standpoint, raw water users. At that time, I believe the 218, if you accumulated 50% protest, written protest, then it was
Correct.
okay. And it always bothered me at the time, and I'm gonna point this out again. There's 14,000 domestic customers and 600 raw users. So we were basically, raw water users had no prayer in hell of fending off a rate hike. And I think that is an injustice that 218, I believe is misinterpreted. I don't believe that is in any way reputable that you can sit there and take the raw water users and lump them in with domestic users. I just want to point that out. Is this new one, is there going to be a protest element to this one?
Yeah. Jesse, are you still on board? Would you like to address this?
Yes, it's still subject to a protest vote, 50%. That is correct.
Okay. So the second point I'd like to make is, if you truly are a board for the public, you would truly have a meeting that most people could attend. 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, and you think you're gonna get a lot of people? Every person on my committee is working. And most of them are over 65 and they're still working. And so if your July 19th meeting, I would suggest you better put that at a time when actual ratepayers can be here. and not be a situation where you're, okay, we're gonna have a 9 o'clock meeting. I just have to drop everything to come up here to get the opportunity to address this. I think that's important. I mean, I think if you're gonna truly represent the public, you gotta give an opportunity to address the issue. I always, when I heard Mr. Sheffield talk about the cost of 60% to domestic and 40% to the raw water, I believe that's correct. Who pays for the loss in the dishes? Because we all know we've done the dish settings and some of these dishes lose a tremendous amount of water. So who pays for that? Do we just eat that loss? Is that passed on equally to everybody?
It's not calculated, so we know 100% of the water that's sold, right? We know that volume that's sold, okay. 40% that goes to raw, 60% goes to domestic use.
And I guess I tag on Mr. Rosaska too, that, you know, when you say, who pays for the loss?
Well, the water you cost anything to begin with.
Exactly, so right now the water loss is water lost and we're not able to provide or sell or whatever, but it goes, the total operating cost, that would be part of that, and all of that total operating split 60/40.
Okay, so now remember, when you buy the system, you are now paying for the loss. Because the contract you had with PG&E gave you X amount of money for water for nothing. So you could lose that, and you lost, was a loss to them, but not to you. So once you bought the system, you now have all the loss in the dishes is now, you're paying for that maintenance of the system up there. And that kind of leads me to my next point. When I see this, I think I have a pretty good idea why we're doing the rate hike right now, but it tells me that you're pretty much a done deal, you're gonna buy a system, or why would you be trying to do a rate hike? Or are you being told to go find the money before you buy a system? I'd like somebody to answer me that, because right now you're doing a rate hike, and on adding on to that, if you don't buy the system, does the rate hike go away?
So let me try to answer some or most of that, or maybe even all of it. One is the notion that the water is free is ridiculous. It's not. It may seem free because we're not paying PG&E a dime, but we pay an awful lot of water to get that from their system to you. We pay a ton of money to get that water, that raw water from them to you. So it's not free. The notion
No,
is
I
free.
said the cost of the water originally is free.
But what I'm saying is it's still, because we don't pay a check to PG&E doesn't mean it's free. So it's not free.
So you will be paying a check though, because you'll pay all the maintenance and everything for the reservoirs.
And that's not a secret. That's not new revelation.
I just wanted
We're
to
talking
comment,
about
that
that.
is a change we'll make. The system will be totally different, correct?
The system won't be different. It will be hopefully.
No, it'll be different because you will be doing the maintenance of the dam, the main line, all of the systems that right now PG&E pays for, we will absorb. And I want people to be clear, Farm Bureau is not against this. I just wish that this organization had been standing there in the early 2000s when we fought hard during the relicenses to get the county and TUD to buy up or get the system. It went on dead ears. I talked to supervisors, former manager McCully. Oh no, this contract is the best thing we've ever got. We'd be crazy to buy this system. So here we are 15 years later, we're gonna buy a system. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, I don't want somebody to perceive that somehow Farm Bureau was against this. I went to some of those meetings in Stockton, sitting at a table, one of the few people that wasn't paid to be sitting at that table at the relicensing. PG&E sent 3 attorneys up to meet with us because they were totally against giving that system away. They knew something was up. Now they want to get the system out of them. We all know why they don't want the burden of the system. I understand why you guys are wanting to buy the system. I get that. I just want to make sure in the long run, how it affects the raw water users and particularly ag customers. So I'll add this on. In 5 years, from a personal standpoint, my water costs doubled. The water cost. Then you add the fixed rate that I pay year round now. That increased it a lot more. I have a 15-inch contract. And now we're gonna add on more to that base rate that I'll pay year round. And one of the things that bothers me about this, I know why the state of California went to the fixed rates, because during the drought, a lot of companies, a lot of agencies, utilities were going broke, because they had to cut their water consumption, they had to have a way of paying for it. I get that. But there's nothing in there. Once you get to a point where 70% is a fixed cost, what's the incentive to cut back on your costs? People aren't gonna conserve water when your cost is already there. Correct? I mean, you're right now, you're gonna pay an X amount of dollars, no matter whether you use water or not. And so 3 or 4 or 5 months out of the year, depending on the rainfall, I'm paying water for a base rate that I'm not taking delivery on. So I can do nothing to conserve on that, right? So I'm kind of stuck. And that's the way it is. And I will tell you that there are several of us that are larger volume. We're not asking for a special exemption, but those bills are hard to absorb. When you're not putting out water, and you're not raising anything, and you're not doing anything, I know it's a year-round idea that, oh, the ditch has to be run. I'm not irrigating in November, December, January, February a lot of times. This year it started in March or late March. And so I pay a standby on my electric bills, on my pumps. I can walk out there and flip that switch and get a pump to run. And on demand, whatever I ask for. I don't know if I can get delivered from you in December, and I don't need it. See, so you're taking us because we're seasonal, and you're adding that burden of cost. And I think that's something that you need to think about. And I know and that's where the 218, I don't believe is fair. I mean, because they bunched us all together as 600 customers with 14,000. Okay, so I would love to see a ditch committee meeting, so maybe we can spend more time going over some of this. We've done it in the past. Don't know whether that's something that the board would be willing to look at, not to waste all your guys' time. I have a whole list of stuff here I could continue on kind of fast, but I think that kind of touches on what we have discussed. I think that pretty much covers most of it. I appreciate the opportunity. If somebody has a question for me, I'll be more than glad to answer it.
If you don't mind, Nathan, you threw this out there. It's a public meeting, and I'm hopeful that there's people in the audience watching. You threw out that question or comment that why would you buy something that you're getting for free today? And I think you know the answer, but for those who may not know the answer, here's the answer. PG&E approached TUD, not the other way around, and said that they have been divesting of themselves of some of these underperforming systems like the Phoenix projects. So they are going to divest themselves. They're going to get rid of this thing. They felt like TUD and Tuolumne County were the natural owners, so they gave us first right of refusal. We entered into exclusive negotiations. So therefore, that free water, that free contract, 1983 contract, is going away whether TUD owns the system or some other entity owns the system. So we're, in some matter of fact, unknown to us today, if another entity besides TUD owns the system, we'll be helping to pay for all of these costs.
So they told you that contract will be void once they sell the system?
It won't be PG&E, it'll be some other entity.
I'm saying that you signed a contract for a water system
with PG&E
for delivery of water. So what you're saying is PG&E has told you, once we sell the system, that contract is void.
Jesse can say it better than I, but we'd have to negotiate a new contract with another entity.
That is, yeah, that contract obligates PG&E to provide the water. The issue with that contract is not complete. The Phoenix system, more water than the Phoenix system Phoenix system can provide it is required to meet the terms of that contract. So there's just no way through the acquisition solely of the Phoenix project that PG&E is going to be able to continue to perform under that 1983 agreement. And even if they were, the likelihood that a new owner of that system and the successive owner of that contract, PG&E has been a wonderful partner. And it doesn't take a whole lot of lawyers to find problems with a contract and renegotiate it. And what TUD is doing here today is planning for the future for Tuolumne County. And, you know, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've said to you previously, I'm not here to say we don't want the system. I'm here to say I've watched this county go into some buyouts and buying things that there's a mine down there that the county bought that I really think we probably shouldn't have bought. So if you don't ask questions, you're not gonna get any answers. Okay? So with that, I won't take any, if there's any other questions for me, I'll answer them, but yes.
Yeah, because I have some follow-up questions on the ditch as well, and not to take up the time here, but what would 7 a.m. morning meeting, ditch committee meeting, would that work for you? Something like that, 7 a.m., what would work for you?
Well, as long as we know, I mean, look, we always prefer to meet in the late afternoon, evening. Most of us, as you know, as farmers, and most of us, not all of us are farmers, as business people, we get up and go after early. So once you've gone to a meeting at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock, you have to go back and regenerate. I would rather meet in the late in the afternoon, the evening meetings. That would be my preference, but
Maybe 3 or 4?
with you guys, you know, you tell me a time and we'll try to be there.
So maybe, because I know it's really hot, it's really important to get work done early in the morning,
Exactly.
get it and then get cleaned up. So would 3 or 4 in the
That's
afternoon
fine.
then work better? Okay,
Something like that.
all right, we'll
Okay.
follow up with you, Nathan.
All right.
Yeah.
So I do want to emphasize that from a Farm Bureau standpoint, agriculture is an important asset to this county. And I believe you raise these rates to the point where we can't absorb them. There's really only one alternative, and that's just cut the water costs. You know, I mean, that's just I'm already talking to people who are saying that, you know, because most of those people, that's not their full-time income. That is my income, you know, and that's what my family does. But there's a lot of people on this system. And the second thing I would really like, we've been highly involved in this vegetation ordinance stuff we're working on right now. And one of the things I've told them, and I need to tell this district, is green zones don't burn. And I believe the Washington fire, if the water hadn't started running down Woods Creek a month before that, it would have been a whole lot worse. The restriction on water, the fact that you continue to restrict water is gonna have a devastating effect on even making worse fire danger. Because water is, I mean, look, in 1960, a fire started in Copper Office, what cleared the Chinese camp, went right through our ranch, never burned a building for 2 reasons. Green pastures around everything and good fire guards around all the equipment. You know, and it's important. Green does stop fire. Green doesn't burn. And so we got to also look at it from that perspective. But when people can only afford to spend so much to keep, you know, a sprinkler running around the house, to keep green around there. So that's another part of this that we need to look at. Okay? Thank you guys.
Thanks, Nathan. All right, any member of the David, go ahead.
Jesse, I have a question for you, that's, was brought up by Mr. Rosasco. Is there a legal differential in our raw water customers compared to our treated water customers? Are we going to run the Proposition 218 correctly where treated water and raw water customers are in the same pool?
There's no legal prohibition of that. If that's the question, no. Everybody who is subject to the rate increase is eligible to submit a protest vote on it. We're treating everybody the same. The fact that there may be different categories of customers, that exists probably in every water utility out there. And there's arguments going back and forth on whether what is fair. Is it fair to shrink the number down and do it in a piecemeal fashion? There are objections to that process as well. And so in this situation, everybody is going to have an equal vote on this rate increase, and that is in compliance with Prop 218.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I think this concludes the discussion portion. And then we'll move on to the actual authorizing of Prop 218 notice. Is that correct? Okay.
Okay,
All right.
that's it. That's the intro to the item, huh? Okay. So thank you. Great discussion so far. And I really do appreciate Nathan coming in, taking the time out of his day to be here. This time of year is pretty precious to him. So, and the audience, we spent a couple of weeks now notifying the county as best we can about why we're here today. And so this is one more step in a few steps that this district has to take. So we need to ask for your permission to print and mail the Prop 218 notices, which will begin a 45-day countdown for which the people that receive that notice can protest, file a written protest. So I think Steve probably has a little bit more to add to that.
So in your board packet as part of this item is the actual notice. Lisa has coordinated with the printing company and mailing company that we used last time we did a rate study. Additionally, this notice was graphically designed in conjunction with Raftellus and TUD staff as well. So were you still gonna hand it out, Lisa? They have it?
I gave it to him.
Oh, okay, thank you. So with that, Nancy, you want to go over the notice itself?
Yes, I can go over the notice. Let me pull that up. So the notice, I mean, the meat of it is really going to be those rate tables. I think that's on the first page, which was a screenshot on the presentation I provided this morning. So it has the incremental increases for treated metered, raw metered, and raw unmetered by miners inches per day. And then also the combined monthly fixed charge, which is kind of that total, including all those incremental increases, as well as the existing monthly fixed charges that the district has in place. And the second page is more informational. It kind of outlines to the customers, why we're doing this, what the objective of this project is, some of the impacts related to that. And so there's a lot of good information on there that is more of courtesy of the communications team on our end that worked really hard to get that Proposition 218 notice drafted for you all. Is there anything specific that y'all want me to cover on that Prop 218 notice above and beyond kind of?
Yeah, I'll add on before any questions here. The 218, the notice is specified within the law itself. So Jesse can correct me if I go wrong in here, but essentially we take every customer we have right now, we take any landlords where there may be a tenant there, and then this document's required to be mailed. We use first class mail to all of those. They have 45 days, a minimum of 45 days to file a formal written protest. The law is very specific in the dark blue section in there. It talks about the written protest, what's required, how that's to be done. And they have up until the date of the proposed adoption, which in this case would be the July 19th date, unless anything gets changed. That's where it spells out how to make a protest. Typically, our customer service can field phone calls, but you cannot file a protest verbally, in person, electronically, any of those. You're required by law to prepare a written protest, identify your parcel number or location, sign it, verify that you are. Sewer-only customers, which we have about 700, are not eligible to this because their rate is not changing. And so we will accumulate these, verify that they are eligible to file a protest. We'll track those separately, and then Melissa will bring to the board the actual count. At that meeting, anybody up until the time the public hearing is closed, they can come in the door and provide a written protest as well as that. As we said before, what's critically important is those tables are the proposed increase. That's what 218 is about. It's not about the existing rates. It's not about anything. 218 says for any increase, we have to go through the 218 process. And then obviously, the second page, the last page, is intended to provide more information for anyone who hasn't heard the joint committee, hasn't seen this, hasn't been to a town hall, open house, anything else, as far as receiving that as well. So again, we're asking the board to basically approve this. If approved today, our plan is to mail it out. I believe it'll go out on the 1st. We were shooting for the 31st, but the 1st will still give us a minimum of 45 days for that protest, and would keep us on track with that July date. Questions? Any?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, what about Nathan's question about the timing? Is it too late to change, if we so chose, to change the time of the meeting on Tuesday, the 19th?
As far as it says that within the notice itself.
Yeah, instead of 9 a.m.
We could still, yeah, that's just a correction with the printer.
Okay.
And on that, the printer, nothing's set until you all approve it, obviously, so.
I mean, that's not gonna affect the
You
timing.
change, and that is a special hearing, it's not a regular board meeting, so it's actually, I believe, the third Tuesday or in there, it's one of the different ones on that, so, yeah, that can be changed.
Steve, as I understand, Nancy's presentation and your presentation, that the increase has to be noticed, but the fine tuning of it, is there room to fine tune the actual increases?
So it's my understanding, and Nancy and Jesse, feel free to correct me, but part of this, until we do the final adoption, basically we cannot increase it. Okay, so if we were to increase the rates or change the methodology, such as excluding ditches or something other on that basis, we would have to restart the whole 218 process. But as far as this, if the board decided they wanted, it to be $1 less or something of that sort, which I'm not recommending at all. Don't go there if you don't have to. But yes, it can be finalized. But keep in mind what we're asking for is this is what we're communicating to the public. And so between now and then, we want public input, we want transparency, we want that. And until July 9th, when the board formally adopts the increase, this is the planned proposed increase based on the best information we have right now.
And when you, sorry,
Go ahead, please.
when you speak of restarting the 218, just to put it out there, what that means, because I know we've been working with Raftelis for a year or more on this. What part is that?
Yeah, I mean, the 218, for me to summarize it, they might do it a little differently, but in simple terms, the 218 is basically we need to gather the data on which the increase is going to be based. We decide how that increase is going to be allocated and distributed, what the methodology is going to be used. We communicate that typically to the board like we did in our earlier meeting. Then we have to prepare the actual notice, and then we'd have to refile the notice, redo the 45 days and everything else, if we don't go with this mailing right here.
And so that would, I'm just trying to put a quantity of time on that.
Right.
Would be months, right?
It just depends, what kind of change are we talking about? If we're talking about redoing the whole methodology, might be something different. If we're talking about taking this and including all the other operating costs as well, I typically, a 218 process is going to take at least 9 months when we're starting from scratch. Now here, this is really more of a financing plan, and that's what Raftelis was hired to do, and that's how we got here, but clearly you've seen the number of meetings and behind the scenes and everything else. So this is consistent with all the previous decisions. It's consistent with what we feel is the most accurate estimates, projections, consistent with our existing rate structure, all of those things combined. This is what the experts, your experts, and all of you have helped us develop and where we're at today.
And my reason for asking the question isn't because I'm trying to do anything. It's that if someone has a suggestion of a change that would restart the 218 process, kind of what are the ramifications of that?
Depending on the change, if it's a change in terms of a lesser dollar amount, that can be done without anything else. If it's more dollar amount or changing who pays what, then I think that'd be a change in methodology and we'd have to go back to a notification type thing.
Yeah, and just to also just for public, anybody who's listening, what you spoke to a moment ago was there's been a lot of time and effort put into this to come up with what we need for operation and maintenance of the system we'd be acquiring. And so, and you said, I wouldn't recommend, knocking something off of that because there's no way to make it up somewhere else without restarting the 218 process.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, if there's some decrease, then that just, we won't have what we expect to need for the O&M for the acquisition.
Speaking for myself, and I think most of us feel this way, this is a critically important issue for the community for generations to come. And we need to find a way to make it work. And we've worked really hard. It's never affordable, whether your rates are doubling or they're going up or whatever it is, we're doing everything we can. And I really feel until we actually have the keys to the system and it's us running it and not PG&E, we started out thinking, is this going to be enough? And that's always a worry and concern in today's world. But, we're really at a point right now, and then we try to come up with a plan that's affordable for the majority of our 15,000 customers. And, it's not going to be perfectly equitable to all, and we do the best we can, but I can tell everybody out there and everybody here, we're going to watch it like a hawk. I mean, I think, once our guys are running it, we track project costs, we track supplies, we track timesheets, we do our hiring based on that. And, while this is for 5 years, because that's what 218 allows us, our goal here is to make this transfer a reality and get these water rights and these supplies in our hands and do that. And then we can track and we report back. We want to be, transparent. We report every 3 months on our financial situation, so I'm really hopeful that, I realize it's hard for everybody, but when I put it in terms of the majority of our customers, it's $200 a year. And hopefully they can afford that and do that. And we get to that point and that'll give us sufficient ones to make this a reality. And then we'll look at, what are the costs that we can control? What are the costs that we can do differently and go from there? But we have to have this as a starting point. We just don't have the reserves and the capability to do it all by ourselves with what we have. And so this is the reason for the 218 of the notice. I don't know, Nancy or Jesse, anything I was out of line there? Or they just grin and bear it.
And the last piece, I would just want to make sure that this is, for the benefit of public watching this or the recording, is just to retouch on what you said when Mr. Riasco was speaking, that thing of that, and I think Don answered this, which was the system is changing hands. And with TU taking it on, we have more control of understanding the actual costs and making sure those costs are passed on to the customers. And there's no guarantee that someone else who took on that system would look at it with that same care and intention to make sure it's the fairest it can be for the county, right? Because if it's an entity outside of the county, they also have a profit margin and things like that they're going to be putting in on it. Is that kind of what I heard you say?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not owning our own parts of our system, having another outside. We shouldn't have been in this situation. Whatever happened in the early 1920s or whatever, shouldn't have happened. It happened. His family's been fighting this for 100 years. We need to fix this. It isn't a perfect situation, but TUD is stepping up to the plate to fix this for the county. We can, like you said, we can iron out some of these differences, whatever they are later, but we have one opportunity right now to do this thing. This is the best plan. If you decide to take $1 away, we're gonna have to come up with that dollar from somewhere. We cannot afford to monkey around, in my estimation, with the rates. We've gone too far. This is the best plan, so yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, yes, go ahead.
I'd like to discuss changing that time, moving it back later in the day to accommodate our, not only our ranchers and whatnot, but our working families and anybody else who might want to participate.
I think that's a good idea. And that would be the July meeting?
Yes, the July 19th meeting, correct.
Okay, change that to afternoon, 2 p.m.
I'd say later than that. I don't know, what do you guys feel on the management team? What's a reasonable time in the afternoon? I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. Is 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening? What, give me your thoughts.
Probably not 7, but
Okay.
I think we're pretty flexible. We're generally here till 5 o'clock, so it's.
Well, when we had them at 7, 7 was a real clear statement. That's sort of after dinner and people can show up now that we can show in person. So that's an option too.
When you get into just in thinking about what people do in here, anybody who's in the tourism side though, when you start getting into the evenings there, you've got another group of people who are not able to come because they're the servers and the restaurateurs and the hotel people and things like that. So it's just that hitting that, the spot, maybe the 3 o'clock spot where it's in between the people who need to be doing the evening stuff. And, I don't know. I, as you guys know, there's never a perfect time, but just July is the middle of the tourist season around here. And there's a big portion of people work within that industry.
Thank you. Director Ring, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think that the Board of Supervisors meets at 9 a.m. in the morning. And I don't understand why we would be changing this. The Farm Bureau members, when there's an issue, they show up at the Board of Supervisors meeting. The Board of Supervisors is not going to change that time. So I personally don't agree with this.
Well, we have a choice to take a vote on changing the time then, I would imagine, to, because we have a wash, but there may be a majority that wants to keep it at 9 and there may be a majority that wants to keep it or change the time. So go ahead, Director.
I hear Director Rain and I respect that, I do, and that's a good point. I know that the Farm Bureau, they're an important clientele of ours, and that is the July month, one of the hottest months we have, and I know from past experience that that's the best time to get work done in the morning. So I would suggest we move it to 4 o'clock, and that's my suggestion.
Okay, so
What time is it, Jeff?
4 o'clock.
so I'm just maybe take a straw poll here, but just informal about any board member in favor of us moving it to 4.
I would second what Jeff has said, is to make that July 19th meeting at 4 o'clock.
Are we in favor of 4 o'clock? I know that's hard on some, yeah, okay, Director Murphy, okay. Okay, so it sounds like we'll change that to 4 o'clock. And with you as a.
Well, there's 3, and if you were 4, then I'm a no.
Okay. Well, you've got plenty of advance warning to, take a nap or something too. All righty, so with this, then I think what we need now is a motion for the authorization. And it's written right there, if somebody wants to just quote the recommended motion.
I'll move to authorize the district staff to mail the Proposition 218 notice with the time change to its water customers.
I would second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Regan.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
too.
Enjoy. Okay, with that, let's see. Yes. Melissa, we covered all our agenda items.
We have.
Okay, then I'll move the discussion to staff reports.
I'll go first and be kind of brief, although it was a very, very busy couple of weeks. As you know, we met on the 10th, a joint meeting with the county and the city at the county chambers to present give an update and the first draft to the county. And by all accounts, that went pretty well. As I've been out in the public, quite a bit since. Literally 100% of the people were in favor of what we're doing, so it's been good. The next day on the 11th, we had a couple of all staff meetings to give them the same presentation, and we feel that I was happy and pleased with the types of questions we got from our own employees. It was helpful for us and for them. On the 17th, you and I met to review this draft agenda. On the 18th, I met with Patty Ingalls, the GM of Jamestown Sanitary District. Just kind of touch bases, part of my mission is to get involved with different leaders in the community. And her and I talked about a couple of things related as far as sewer agencies go, but we talked a little bit about the mutual aid assistance agreement that's in the working. So she's really excited about that. She's really happy with where TUD is. She loves the leadership. She loves how the board is. So she's happy. And her and I will start meeting pretty regularly. On the 19th, I attended a housing symposium. I was invited about a month ago by Jaron Brandon to go to a housing symposium down in Chicken Ranch. And I wasn't sure what to expect, but it's a group of leaders, both private and public contractors and the like, to try to work out, some ideas on how to solve the housing crisis. Not up on the housing crisis, but it's not a shock to me that we're having struggle to find affordable housing or housing period in Walnut County. So this group of people are working together to try and come up with ways to solve that, and TUD is a natural entity there, they felt. On the 23rd, Jesse and I and a few others met with VOR. We talked about our latest on our water needs assessment for contract out of water out of Maloney's. That's moving. It's moving just a little slow, but moving, progressing nonetheless. Coming up on the 26th, we have a special meeting here to go over both the FY23 CIP and the O&M budget for fiscal year 20 that's coming up in a couple of days. Then on the 25th, though, Eric, I think, is going to attend a disaster declaration and recovery seminar for cities and special districts. At least I think you are, right?
Still, yes, I'm thinking about it.
We have staff representation.
You have staff representation there. So anyway, busy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Any staff want to go next?
I'll just let the board know that tomorrow on the 25th, we have a tour of Sierra Pines. We've invited representatives of the Division of Financial Assistance, Division of Drinking Water from the State Water Board, possibly some folks from USDA, and we're going to take them up to the site, do a walkthrough, make somewhat of a pitch for the importance to the district of funding the project, and kind of impose on them that we're ready. There's a high readiness to proceed, given that we're far along in our environmental and our permitting. So we're hopeful that by the end of this year, we might be able to bring to the board some measure of funding that will allow us to move forward with some phase of the project that's critically needed. As you know, many of our treatment facilities are going to need some attention here in the near term if we can't consolidate at Sierra Pines.
Thank you, Eric.
I'll chime in real briefly. It was this wasn't enough. Thank you very much all for that, but it seems like it's been high anxiety for a couple of weeks now, more so than normal, but it continues this week. And as Don alluded to, we've got the budget workshop ready to go for that discussion. Looking forward to that. We have auditors have begun their interim testing. They are doing that remotely like they did last year. For right now, they'll do that between now and the end of the year, and then they will physically be here in August. They show a great more interest that, since we have a USDA grant and loan, that becomes a federal single audit program. As Eric mentioned, we're coming up to our contribution of 8.9 million. Once we reach that level, then we'll be drawing down from the funds we receive through the bond proceeds that's sitting there. So the excitement never ends. It just keeps going.
Busy. Thank you.
Eric?
I'll take the opportunity to recognize a couple of staff members. Ben Peterson, this was in the operations report, but I'll just point it out. Ben Peterson got his collection system maintenance grade 2 certification in April, and Manny Espino passed his grade 2 wastewater exam. So a very tough exam. So congratulations to them, and that is building our bench a little further on the wastewater side, certainly. And just thought I would mention, this just came to me, so, but Eric Hall and Michelle Perkins and Will West out in the shop have been working really hard. There's some new DOT guidelines for our commercial drivers. We have 38 commercial drivers currently on staff, so about half of our staff have either a Class A or a Class B commercial driver's license or a hazardous materials endorsement. And as of about 2 months ago, DOT has enacted some different requirements for any new drivers coming on board. So they get their permit, a Class A or a Class B, and they get drive time behind the wheel, get their training, learn how to do all the inspections related to the equipment they're operating. And then they would go to the DMV and take the actual driver's test, similar to a Class C, but a lot more complicated. Now there is a 15-hour driving training requirement, which we have been working very hard on. We're working out the details, but I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm really proud and not surprised that our staff is really stepping up. Will West, our fleet foreman, is helping to put together a training program, which is most natural, but he is swamped out there with our other equipment mechanic. But rather than having to send our drivers out for this 15-hour training like most organizations are doing, we are developing a program internally, making sure that our drivers get the training that they need, that it's within the DOT guidelines, and that we'll move forward with that training program, in addition to all of our other training programs. So it's a little bit stressful trying to make sure that we have all of our T's crossed and I's dotted. So we have some drivers that are in the queue that are waiting to get their permits, so that until we finalize this training program. But anyway, Eric Hall has been working a lot on it, and Will West and Michelle Perkins. So I just wanted to acknowledge them, because that actually will save the district quite a bit of money. Rather than sending the time away from work for these folks to get that training, but also the expense of paying an outside organization for that. So anyway, anything to add?
We haven't found anybody that offers a 15-hour course. They say, yes, you can do it, but it's 40 hours. And it's not cheap. And it's, you're gone for that whole week. So.
Yeah. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, directors?
May 9th, attended the LAFCO board meeting, and we approved and sent out our draft budget, which should be circulating to the agencies that fund LAFCO. And then we're going to be working on updating the LAFCO process and procedures. We had another public workshop on the Tuolumne City sanitary district application for joining a couple of service districts out there into one. And a public workshop on the MSR for GCSD, which is Groveland Community Service District. Got to apologize, I forgot what MSR acronym stands for.
Municipal Service Review.
But it's a process and procedure where LAFCO has agencies under its jurisdiction reporting back on meeting the requirements of the agency, such as TUD for water, wastewater, raw water, and TUD will be going through its MSR within, I think, a year.
It's due at the end of this year.
End of this year. So that's all I have from LAFCO.
Great. Thank you. Anything else to report? Yes.
First, I'd like to thank you for reordering the agenda today to accommodate my work schedule. I really appreciate that. And I will catch the earlier portion on video with the other public. But on Tuesday and Wednesday, I was up in Sacramento for the legislative days for special districts. And I'll set up a meeting with you, Don, to just talk about some of the things that they brought up. Just what it is during that time we get brought up to speed on kind of what's coming down the pipe, what things people are worried about and what things are kind of on the docket and waiting to be seen if they're going to be coming our way or not. So that was interesting. I went to the climate change breakout session. On that, there was one that I think would be particularly interesting to us, but I'll talk with you about, which is the group that's working with Scripps out of Sonoma County Water District, and Scripps are working together on the understanding, predicting the atmospheric rivers, which is an important thing for California specifically to understand. And so anyway, I'll tell you what I learned about that and stuff. Yeah, it was a fascinating thing to just be there with other special districts. Not everybody was there from a water or a wastewater perspective, but it was yeah, it was an interesting thing to go to, and got some things to talk with you about.
Great. Yeah, it is a whole other world down there. And we at least I assume we all have a dual water system, but that's not really the case when you go down there.
Yeah.
We're pretty lucky up here, so I'm glad you went.
Yeah, I think.
Good. Okay, Director Ringen.
Okay, before I get started, great on tap. They just seem like they're getting better and better. Got good information, so good job. On 517, Rick Lynn and myself, who are chair and vice chair of the Mountain Counties Water Resource Association Legislative Committee, met with the executive director, Justin Caparoso.
Caparoso.
Yeah. Anyway, to put together the agenda for the full-fledged committee about a week later. So that was pretty interesting because we were touching on numerous items. The same day, attended the Tuolumne Stanislaus Irwin Outreach Committee meeting, and that also was very interesting. We are coming up with a plan to be able to, which we're gonna have to run by the Water Advisory Committee and get their okay on it, their blessing, but we wanna have a way to put information out to the to our public so that they know how much grant money we have brought into the area, which now is, I believe, well over $25 million, and the projects that have been completed that were so important that ratepayers and taxpayers could never have afforded. So anyway, it's going to be really interesting, and we're going to archive. We're hoping to archive the information on the TSTAN website so that it doesn't get lost. So it'll be an ongoing thing. And 518 was too bad. Yeah, 518 was the TSTAN Irwin JPA meeting, and that was put together mostly because there's some new projects that are going to be put into the plan. Groveland, for some reason, I guess they've had so much on their plate that they didn't meet the time limit, and so we opened it back up so we could get their projects in there and hopefully be able to find some grant money for they've got a mess over there. They got way too much going on. Let's see here. 519 was Tuolumne County Climate Action Plan meeting. That was interesting, I guess. I don't have a lot of information on it. I was mostly just looking to see what they were trying to accomplish. And finally on 520 was the Mountain County's Legislative Committee meeting. And what was good about that is that the one of the major topics that we covered was trying to come up with suggestions for Justin as to what should be presented at the Caldor fire tour. And he really appreciated that. So, and there were several really good ideas. So if you can, try and go to that, because that's going to be really an educational deal. And we were pushing hard that we stick to what John Kingsbury started with this shared information in water between Southern California and the mountain counties, and then also east-west. So should be really good. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Ron. I'll just talk about that right now in my report. So what Ron is talking about is a program, it's an educational program that has been ongoing, it seems like, for the last decade or more. And that is to help educate our Southern California and our coastal communities about the importance of CR water, since 65% of their water comes from us, and water is the economic driver of California, and 50% of the boats are down south. We don't have them. We are outreaching, and plus they're really good people. So, and they're very interested. So for example, the desal plant that the Coastal Commission said no to, Mountain Counties, we wrote a letter saying thank you for at least considering desal, because that helps take the stress off the CRA. And that gives you more local control over your water resources. And so they are really, whenever they come up and we sit on those buses, and this is people from Mesa or some of the other Orange County people, they see the fire, they're in the fire. They cannot believe the scale of the watershed. They learn about natural sequestration. It's not just San Luis Reservoir. Their minds are blown. They get it on this sublime scale when you just see thousands of vertical black, charcoal sticks. And it makes them make better decisions down there. And plus, they help us up here. They help sponsor some projects. They help fly speakers from up here down there, and they help offset some of their costs because they know we don't have the resources. And so they are very tuned in. And what the cool thing about being on the bus with these guys, and this is going to be June 22nd to the 24th, is you get to learn a lot about their systems too. It's all really informal. We all have little name tags. We all know who's who. They're all electeds. Okay, it's not just NGOs. These are electeds, and you get to just talk about stuff. And these are really important meetings to be ambassadors for our Sierra region, and they're very successful. And they do translate into more sympathetic legislation to up here because they know our issues. So I'm just elaborating out that I would encourage everybody, if they wanted to attend the Caldor Fire Tour and be with we're all in it together. And so that's going to be again in June, and please go on the Mountain County's website for more information on that. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is I wanted to thank Melissa and her counterpart at the county for moving everything around so that we could accommodate the Board of Supervisors meeting last week. That took a lot of behind the scenes to pull that off, name cards. I was just really pleased at our level of commitment and professionalism and outreach. So, we're getting there with the county, and I think that the county, I love the famous line was Mark Plummer from the city saying, oh, so you guys are pretty important, you know, it's just like, well, yes, and then that brings us to the next thing, is the grand jury report
He
is
didn't, he
out.
didn't say pretty important, he said we are the most important.
Oh, thank you.
Straighten it.
Yes, we are. That's an important correction, okay. So, if you've all seen the grand jury report, it's out now. And I think it's significant that the title of the report for our section is Water is Life. I thought that that was very significant. And so, you know, we will be addressing this. We have nine days. I think these are always something, for public accountability, and I really appreciate the time that that our grand juries take on a volunteer basis to review TUD, and we've pretty much been on their in their sites, good and bad. We have some good input in here as well, even though sometimes the paper can make it look like it's a little negative. There is positive that they are acknowledging. So this is really a good report, and I love the fact that the main canal, although it looks like it has algae, red algae on it, but it's just reflection, and then, you know, the quality of the printer. So yeah, folks, we will be working on a response to that. And
Guys, for the benefit of everybody else, so we all in our own way are collectively putting together pieces of information for us to respond with. So each one of us has a little part in that so we'll be bringing information to you pretty soon on what we think are important components of there. So.
okay, and I just have two more pieces. The LA Times is putting people on their watering once a week. What is exempt are their trees. They are encouraging people to not lose that those are working landscape pieces, and to make sure that those trees are watered. And because the results of not watering your trees can be higher fire danger. So what Nathan Rosasco said is absolutely right. Green is a lot better than brown, and brown is better than black. So we don't want to burn. And there are mutual aid agreements with ranchers up at Paradise. They're working this out, where there's the green, where if you have to park your livestock, you can, and have a large animal vet in case of evacuation. There's where you don't have to use bolt cutters. The rancher will let you in because he's got 300 acres of green, and it's a safer zone for animals. So I would like us to pay attention to that kind of service. And Nathan has brought that up to me as well. He understands the value of green. So in the interest of risk, nature-based risk reduction, our green landscapes are increasingly in value, and I think it gives us a chance to evaluate our green landscapes as well. So I think I covered everything. It's the tree, watering the trees is important, so I think we should water the trees up here as well. Oh, Lisa, atmospheric rivers. I think I'm really glad that you got some, because that is the other side of the equation. We've got the fire, we've got the atmospheric rivers. And yet I still see cutting live oak, which will break the fall of rain during a month-long deluge on our cut banks. And the slope erosion and liquefaction is something I think this county needs to start considering. We've got the fire thing down, but we're creating another problem on our through cut. So you know, to be continued there. So I'm glad people are starting to talk more about it. It'd be great to hear more. So with that, any other words for the good of the order? Okay, then the meeting will be adjourned at 11:22.